She hadn't laughed in 423 days. Not a chuckle, not even a breathy smile. The silence in Amanda Lawson's world wasn't quiet, it was deafening. Thick and unmoving, like wet wool on a winter morning. Even the birds seemed to chirp softer when they passed her window. Inside the great marble house on Banana Island, time dragged its feet. Each hour marked only by the slow creak of wheels as her nanny pushed her through the hallways. The girl who once ran barefoot through the garden, chasing butterflies and throwing herself into her mother's arms, now barely blinked when spoken to. She was 8, and already she had the stillness of old age. The accident had taken Elizabeth Lawson, and Amanda's legs, and something else too, her light. Richard Lawson had tried everything to bring it back. He was a man who turned sand into skyscrapers and crude oil into gold. In business, they called him the Golden Touch. He had never heard the word no without adding a price tag. But grief doesn't take bribes, and paralysis doesn't sign contracts. He flew Amanda to India for nerve regeneration, to Germany for robotic rehabilitation, to the U.S. for experimental therapy that required signatures and secrecy. Every time he came back with more bills and less hope. So he stopped speaking about recovery. The therapists came less. The visitors stopped. Richard, once commanding boardrooms full of billionaires, now stood outside his daughter's door, listening for sounds that never came. Until one Tuesday afternoon, hot, still, unremarkable, when something broke. It began with rustling in the hedge. Amanda was parked in the garden, her wheelchair angled just enough to catch the breeze. Her eyes were on the gate, but they weren't seeing it. Not really. Then, movement. A boy, thin as a shadow, shirt half hanging off one shoulder. Shorts knotted at the waist with what looked like an old shoelace. His knees were bruised, skin scraped like he'd been climbing through the city one fall at a time. His hair stuck up in wild patches, as if every night was a battle with the wind. Amanda's lips didn't move. Her hands stayed limp on the wheels. The boy looked at her, then grinned, a lopsided, toothy thing full of mischief. And without a word, he danced. Not well, not even in rhythm. His elbows jutted, his feet skittered across the grass like he had rubber bands for knees. He spun, hopped, dropped, then flailed dramatically like he'd been hit by invisible lightning. Amanda blinked. The boy crossed his eyes, puffed out his cheeks, and collapsed in the grass like a tragic Shakespearean clown. And Amanda giggled. It was so small at first that it almost went unnoticed. But the boy caught it. His eyes widened. His grin exploded. He danced harder. He made up a routine on the spot. A bumbling imitation of a bus driver arguing with a conductor, complete with sound effects. Amanda clapped. It was awkward, offbeat clapping, but her hands moved. Then she laughed. Really laughed. That wild, free kind of laugh that belongs only to children and people who've just remembered how to hope. From the second-floor study, Richard froze mid-sentence. The laugh hit him like a slap. Sharp. Unmistakable. He dropped his pen. His legs carried him faster than his thoughts, through the halls, past the startled staff, and out to the balcony overlooking the garden. And there she was, Amanda, his little girl, red-faced and laughing, her shoulders shaking with joy, her head tilted back toward the sky like someone who'd forgotten gravity. And beside her, dancing like a cartoon tornado, was a street boy. A nobody. A boy who shouldn't have been there. Richard's first instinct was rage. Where were the guards? How had this child gotten through the gates? What if he was sick, dangerous? What if he touched her? His mouth opened to shout. But then, he stopped. Amanda's hands were clapping. Her eyes were bright. Her back, which usually slumped in quiet resignation, was upright. And her legs? Had her foot just shifted? He blinked. He wasn't sure, but he didn't call the guards. Instead, he stepped back into the shadows, watching from behind a marble column like a man peering into a dream he wasn't ready to disturb. The boy danced for 10 more minutes. Amanda laughed the entire time. When he finally waved goodbye and disappeared through the hedge, Richard stepped forward. But he was too late. Amanda was already looking at the gate again, cheeks flushed, fingers tapping the armrest of her chair like a metronome of hope. The next afternoon, the boy came back. Same hole in the hedge. Same torn shirt. Same sparkle in his eyes. Amanda was waiting. He bowed like a circus ringmaster. "Are you ready?" he asked. She clapped. He danced. This time, Richard didn't hide. He walked straight into the garden. The boy froze mid-spin. The smile fell off his face. He'd seen that look before, from shopkeepers, from bus drivers, from men who didn't want him near their cars, their stores, their children. Amanda gasped, "Daddy, please don't send him away." Richard looked the boy over. Up close, the scars were clearer. His ribs showed beneath his shirt. There was a hole in his left sock, though he wasn't wearing shoes. "What's your name?" Richard asked. "Cola." He said it with pride, though Richard could tell it wasn't his real name, just a name the street had given him. "Why are you here?" Cola's voice dropped. She looked sad. "I thought maybe if I danced, she'd laugh. I didn't come to steal anything. I just wanted to give something." It wasn't the words that hit Richard. It was the way he said them, like someone who had nothing left to lose. "Where do you sleep?" Richard asked. Cola shrugged. "Bus park. Sometimes near the old market. I dance for coins. But sometimes, I just dance so I don't feel hungry." Amanda's hands gripped the sides of her chair. "He makes me happy," she whispered. "Please." Richard's eyes softened. He saw his daughter, really saw her. She was alive again, lit from within by something no hospital machine could recreate. "Okay," Richard said quietly. "You can stay today, but only in the open, where I can see you. No nonsense." Cola nodded like a soldier given orders. He turned back to Amanda and grinned. "Showtime." She laughed. And once again, the garden bloomed with joy. One day turned into two, then a week. By the end of the second week, Richard had left instructions at the gate. Let him in at 4. He leaves at 6. Feed him before he goes. No one asked questions, because even the staff had noticed. Amanda's voice was stronger, her eyes brighter, her hands clapped faster. One time, she even tried to lift herself slightly in the chair. Richard saw it all, but he said nothing. Not yet. He watched as Cola danced his silly dances, told stories with his hands, made siren noises, reenacted traffic arguments with full dramatics. Amanda couldn't get enough. And somewhere, deep in the quiet of his chest, Richard Lawson, the man with everything, felt the stirrings of something unfamiliar. Gratitude. That night, as the house finally settled into sleep, Richard stood by the window, watching the dark garden. The boy was gone, but the laughter lingered. He didn't whisper prayers. He didn't make phone calls. He just stood there and said into the silence, "Thank you, boy." And though no one answered, the air around him seemed to breathe. The silence had finally cracked. And the story, the real one, had only just begun. The next morning, Cola woke to the familiar grumble of an old bus coughing into life, its diesel breath fogging the dawn air. He was curled under the rusted canopy of a kiosk, limbs aching from the hard ground. His stomach was hollow, aching. But something in him felt different today, lighter, somehow. Like he was walking through the world with a balloon tied to his chest. He had made a girl laugh. Not just any girl. A girl with sadness painted into her bones. A girl who hadn't smiled in months. And now, because of him, she had. He combed his fingers through his hair, a half-hearted attempt at order, and dusted off his knees. Then he started walking. No hesitation. No plan. He knew exactly where he was going. Back to Banana Island. Back to the mansion with the garden and the girl in the chair. The guards didn't stop him this time. One of them gave him a small nod and pushed the gate open like they'd been expecting him. Inside, Amanda was already waiting. She wore a pale blue dress, her hair tied neatly with a ribbon. Someone had taken care to brush it today. Her face lit up when she saw him. And for a moment, Cola forgot every hungry night, every corner he'd slept in, every insult hurled from passing cars. "You're late," she said, but she was already smiling. "I had to fight a goat for the road," Cola replied with a solemn face. "He was stubborn. I lost." Amanda laughed. "Liar. Storyteller," he corrected, bowing dramatically. "Now, your afternoon entertainment begins." And with that, he began, leaping, spinning, flailing through the grass with the abandon of someone who had never known shame. He mimicked a music video gone wrong, added chicken sounds, made his arms wobble like jelly. Amanda's laughter rose and rose, chasing away whatever grayness had once clung to the walls of the mansion. From the upstairs balcony, Richard Lawson stood watching, coffee forgotten in his hands. He had heard her laugh again, and now, there was no denying it. Something was changing. That afternoon, Richard stepped into the garden, suit jacket abandoned, sleeves rolled up. Cola froze mid-dance. His body went stiff, the way stray dogs do when someone reaches for a stone. Richard motioned to him, not to leave, to come closer. They sat beneath the shade of an old almond tree, the air humming with the smell of dust and leaves. Amanda rolled her chair nearby, close enough to listen but far enough to pretend she wasn't. "Tell me something," Richard said. "Why do you really dance?" Cola scratched the back of his neck. "Because if I sit still too long, I start to remember things. Like how hungry I am, or how no one wants me around. But when I dance," he paused, squinting at the sky. "When I dance, I feel real." Richard was quiet for a moment. Then, softly, "You are real, Cola. And you matter." Cola looked at him, unsure how to receive that. No one had ever told him he mattered. Not once. "You brought my daughter back," Richard said. "Not the doctors. Not the therapists. You." The boy's voice dropped to a whisper. "She was never gone. Just waiting." From that day forward, Richard stopped watching from a distance. He started sitting outside during the performances, his phone left behind, his meetings pushed. His daughter, his Amanda, was laughing, clapping, trying. That word felt heavier than gold. Amanda's hands grew stronger, her voice more confident. She began giving Cola directions. "Do the police siren again," or "make the goat face." And he obeyed with flair. Sometimes she tried to mimic his dance moves from her chair, spinning slowly, awkwardly, with a fierce determination. One afternoon, without warning, she completed a full circle in her wheelchair. The cook wept quietly. The housemaids exchanged glances of disbelief. Richard said nothing. He simply placed his hand over his mouth and looked away so no one would see the tears burning behind his eyes. That evening, Cola sat quietly on the back steps, knees hugged to his chest. The sun dipped behind the city skyline. Richard joined him. "Dinner's inside," he said. "I'm fine here," Cola replied. "You shouldn't eat alone." "I usually do." "Well, you don't have to. Not anymore." Cola hesitated, then looked up. "Why are you being kind to me?" Richard leaned back, arms resting on his knees. "Because for the first time in over a year, my daughter is alive again. That matters more than anything I've ever built." They sat in silence for a while. Not the heavy kind. The good kind. The kind that says, we don't have to say everything. Days passed. Then weeks. Every afternoon, Cola arrived. Every day, Amanda clapped harder, laughed louder, moved more. She asked him questions about his life, about dancing, about the places he slept. He told her little pieces, never the worst parts. Just enough. And one day, as Cola was pretending to be a confused rooster crossing a busy Lagos road, Amanda shouted, "Wait." He stopped mid-wobble. She gripped the arms of her chair. "I want to try something," she said. Richard, who had just stepped outside, froze. Amanda closed her eyes. Her brow furrowed. Her arms tensed. She pushed down with all her might. For a second, just a second, her hips lifted off the chair. Just 2 inches. Her whole body trembled. Cola held his breath. Richard's throat tightened. Then, slowly, Amanda lowered herself back down, chest heaving, cheeks flushed. She looked up, eyes wide, and whispered, "Did you see that?" Neither of them answered, because both were still staring. Both were afraid to speak in case it broke the spell. Then Cola hooped so loudly it startled the birds out of the trees. "You did it. You moved. Amanda, you did it." He dropped to his knees beside her chair, pumping his fists in the air like a coach celebrating a goal. Richard walked over slowly and knelt on the other side. He reached out, not as a billionaire, not as a father clinging to hope, but as a man who had just witnessed something sacred. "You're brave," he whispered. "You are so, so brave." Amanda took one hand from each of them, Cola on one side, her father on the other. "I'm not scared anymore," she said. "When he dances, I feel like I can move." And from that moment forward, something unspoken passed between the three of them. They didn't tell the world. They didn't call the press or tweet the moment. They simply kept going. One dance at a time. One laugh at a time. 1 inch of movement at a time. And all the while, the sun kept rising over Banana Island. But the mansion on the corner, it was no longer just a house full of marble and silence. It was becoming something else. Something warmer. Something alive. Amanda didn't tell anyone. But that night, after lifting herself for those 2 trembling inches, she didn't sleep. Not from fear. From fire. Something had awakened inside her, something old and powerful. The memory of standing, of moving, of feeling tall. She laid in bed with her eyes wide open, her fingers twitching at her sides, replaying the moment over and over. Her arms still ached, but it was a good ache. The kind that meant something was happening. Changing. Down the hall, her father wasn't sleeping either. Richard Lawson stood in his study, staring at the same report for an hour without reading a word. His phone buzzed with reminders, oil contracts, property deals, foreign calls. But he ignored them all. Instead, he was thinking about Kola. The boy had arrived with nothing. No shoes. No education. No parents. Yet somehow, he had done what Richard's wealth could not, awaken Amanda's will. Richard's jaw clenched as he stared at the dark garden below. That boy, with his ragged shirt and bruised knees, had managed to reach Amanda where the world's best doctors had failed. And that simple truth humbled him more than any boardroom defeat ever had. At sunrise, Richard found Kola on the back steps again. He sat as he always did, arms around his knees, chin resting on the edge, eyes distant. "You shouldn't be out here alone," Richard said. "I'm used to it," Kola replied softly. "Not anymore." Kola turned, unsure if he'd heard correctly. Richard sat beside him. "This is your home now. You'll eat 3 meals a day. You'll go to school. You'll sleep inside, not under bridges." Kola stared at him, his lips parting in disbelief. "You mean, I can stay?" "I mean," Richard said, "you belong here." Kola's throat worked around a knot. His voice came out cracked. "Thank you, sir." Richard looked at him fully now, eyes sharp, voice low. "You gave my daughter something no one else could. You gave her hope. And anyone who gives hope," he paused, "that person isn't just welcome. They're family." That night, for the first time in his life, Kola slept on a real bed. The sheets were soft. The ceiling fan hummed a quiet lullaby. But even as he lay beneath the clean white sheets, he kept one foot outside the covers, as if ready to run. The fear would take time to leave him. But for now, for this one night, he let his body rest. He was home. It didn't take long for the story to seep into the city's corners. Banana Island didn't keep secrets for long. Whispers rose like steam over morning tea. The mighty Richard Lawson had taken in a street boy. Some called it madness. Others called it grace. But the news cameras were coming. And not everyone was pleased. "Richard, think carefully," one of his business partners warned over lunch. "You're letting a homeless boy live in your house. If he steals, if something happens, it'll be your name in the headlines." Another chimed in. "It's sentiment, not strategy. This could damage your image. Your brand." Richard stirred his coffee slowly. "My image," he said calmly, "is a man whose daughter just stood for the first time in over a year. That's the only image I care about." They didn't know how to answer that. Amanda did. To every journalist who tried to twist Kola's presence into a scandal, she had only one sentence. "If you don't like Kola, you don't love me." The public began to shift. Something in her simple honesty softened the skepticism. People began to talk, not about wealth or scandal, but about kindness. And in the middle of it all, Kola stayed the same. He still danced every afternoon. He still made Amanda laugh so hard she forgot she couldn't walk. He still ate quietly, slept lightly, and gave more than he took. But there was one difference. He smiled more. Real smiles. Full, unguarded, no longer hiding behind the armor of jokes. Amanda noticed it first. "You're not so serious anymore," she teased one day. "I'm trying it," Kola said. This whole being happy thing. It was a Tuesday afternoon when it happened. The sun was warm. The garden was bright. And Kola was doing his slow-motion robot dance, pretending the air had turned to jelly. Amanda was clapping, shouting for him to go slower. Slower. When she suddenly paused, she looked down at her legs, then up at her father, who sat nearby with his newspaper folded in his lap. "I want to try standing," she said. Silence dropped like a stone into a still pond. Kola stopped mid-spin. "What? I mean it." Amanda placed her hands firmly on her wheelchair. Richard stood halfway, unsure whether to stop her or believe in her. Kola took one cautious step forward. "Amanda, don't hurt yourself." "I won't." Her voice was strong. She gripped the arms of her chair, took a breath, and pushed. It was slow, painful. Her arms trembled, her face twisted in determination. Her feet, slippered and still, pressed against the ground like they were waking up. One knee twitched, then the other. Then, slowly, impossibly, Amanda rose. Not fully, not straight, but she was standing. Her body shook like a candle in the wind. Her eyes filled. Her arms strained. But she was up. Cola's mouth fell open. Richard couldn't breathe. For 3 seconds, the world held its breath. And then, gently, Amanda lowered herself back into the chair. She let out a shaky laugh, half tears, half triumph. Did you see that? Cola dropped to his knees in front of her, tears rolling down his cheeks. You did it. Amanda, you stood. Richard knelt too, his voice barely above a whisper. You are the bravest person I know. Amanda looked at them both, her father, the boy who made her laugh, and whispered, I want to try again. Tomorrow. And no one doubted that she would. From the back windows of the house, the staff watched in silence. The house that had once echoed with nothing now pulsed with life. Amanda had stood, and they all knew something had changed forever, not just in her legs, but in the foundation of that house, in the man who owned it, and in the boy who had once been invisible. The silence had ended, and the dance was far from over. Cola stood on the balcony, watching the city blink awake beneath him. Banana Island was silent at that hour. No horns, no vendors shouting over each other, no smell of roadside smoke. Just light breeze and the far-off murmur of a waking world. He leaned on the railing, one foot resting on the edge, eyes tracing the horizon. It didn't feel real, this new life. A bed, hot food, laughter. Amanda. He still dreamed about the bridge sometimes. The way the concrete pressed into his spine. The way the cold settled into his bones. Some nights, even in the Lawson mansion, his body still curled like he expected the wind to whip through the cracks. But this wasn't the bridge. This was a place with walls that didn't just keep things out, they kept him in. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't running. He was wanted. He was home. Amanda was improving faster than any doctor had predicted. Her therapists were baffled. They ran tests, adjusted routines, brought in specialists who whispered things like neural rewiring and emotional stimulus pathways. Richard watched them poke and prod and scribble into their notebooks, but he didn't need science to explain it. The truth was simple. Amanda was healing because she wanted to, because something inside her had awakened, because a boy with nothing had reminded her she was still alive. And now she moved. Not just small trembles, but real movement. Her legs still trembled, still failed sometimes, but she stood now. A few seconds longer each day. Her arms grew stronger. Her will? Indestructible. Every time she stood, Cola clapped like she'd won the Olympics. Every time she sat back down, he crouched beside her and whispered, next time, taller. She laughed harder than ever. And Richard? He started to change too. He spent less time in meetings, more time in the garden. He canceled 2 international trips without blinking. For the first time, his company executives started sending him emails with the subject line, just updating, no action needed. He didn't mind. He was busy learning how to live again. One Saturday, Richard invited Cola to sit with him in the garden. No performance, no dancing, just a quiet conversation. Tell me about you, Richard said. Not just where you sleep. The rest of it. Cola hesitated. People never asked. People assumed. He looked down at his fingers, then slowly began. I don't remember my mother's voice. I think I was 4 when she died. She sold oranges by the road. One day she didn't come back. Someone said she fell sick. That's all I know. He paused. My father, he left before that. I remember his boots. That's it. They had a hole in them. Richard said nothing. Just listened. Cola continued. I stayed with an old woman in a market stall for a while. She gave me leftover food. But when I turned 8, she told me I was too big. So I left. I found other boys. We stayed near the bus park. Some stole. I didn't. I danced. Sometimes people threw coins. Sometimes they threw insults. But dancing made the hunger quieter. He looked up, face unreadable. I think I forgot how to talk to people. Except when I'm dancing. Richard's voice was rough when he finally spoke. But you still knew how to give. Cola blinked. What do you mean? You gave my daughter something no surgeon could. You gave her herself back. The boy shook his head. She was already there. I just knocked. Amanda had begun taking real steps. Tiny. Shaky. But hers. She held on to bars during therapy. Took 2 steps. Then 3. Her legs still wobbled like a baby deer's. But her eyes were fierce. And when she fell, because she did fall, she never cried. She laughed. And every time, she looked around the room and said, Where's Cola? He's going to miss this. The therapists made notes. Amanda made history. But not everyone was ready to celebrate. One Monday morning, Richard received an unexpected visitor. His sister, Evelyn. She arrived unannounced, gliding through the doors like she still owned part of the house. She wore pearls like armor and a voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I heard the rumors," she said without sitting. "You've taken in a stray." Richard sipped his coffee. "His name is Cola. I don't care what he calls himself. He's a street child." "Richard, this is dangerous. What happens when he steals from you? When he disappears with something valuable? Think of Amanda." "I am thinking of Amanda," Richard cut in. "Every day." Evelyn shook her head. "This isn't like you. You're being emotional." "I am," he said. "And thank God for that." She blinked, surprised. Then, quietly, "People are watching. Let them." He stood, ending the conversation. Evelyn didn't return. The city, however, did begin to pay attention. Journalists showed up outside the gates. "Is it true Mr. Lawson adopted a beggar? Is this a publicity stunt? Why risk everything for a child who might run?" Richard said nothing publicly. But Amanda? She had her own answer. During a small school project her tutor filmed, Amanda was asked to describe someone she admired. She didn't mention her father. She didn't mention her doctors. She looked straight into the camera and said, "Cola. He made me laugh when I forgot how. He helped me walk again. And he never asked for anything. He's my hero. He's my best friend. He's my brother." The video was shared on social media by the tutor's daughter. It went viral in 2 days. That week, a letter arrived at the mansion gate. It was handwritten, in shaky cursive, folded twice. No return address. It read, "To the boy who dances, thank you. My daughter hasn't smiled since her accident. But when she saw the video, she laughed. She said, 'Maybe I can walk too. I just wanted you to know, you changed something in our house too.'" Cola held the letter in both hands, stunned. He had no idea anyone was watching. He had only been dancing for one girl. Now it seemed the world was listening. One evening, Amanda tried something new. "I want to walk across the grass," she said. "No rails. No handles. Just feet and earth." Cola blinked. "Amanda, that's—" "I know," she said. "But I want to try. Just a little." They stepped outside together. Amanda gripped Cola's hand. Her right foot moved first, then the left. Each step took the strength of mountains. But she did it. She crossed the lawn. Richard watched from the window. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just let the tears fall quietly down his face, unhidden this time. And behind him, on a shelf that used to hold awards, now sat a small, crumpled piece of paper, the first letter of thanks Cola had ever received. That night, as Amanda drifted off to sleep, she whispered to her father, "I don't feel broken anymore." Richard kissed her forehead. "You never were." Cola stood outside again that evening, looking at the stars, hands tucked into his new jacket, one Amanda had insisted he wear. It still felt strange. Warmth without cold. A roof without rain. But the strangest feeling of all, he didn't feel alone anymore. And for a boy who had been invisible all his life, that was the greatest miracle of all. The mansion was no longer just marble and glass. It was a home. And the boy who had once danced to forget he was hungry was now dancing for joy. The house felt different now. It still had the same tall white pillars, the same silent hallways, the same garden where the butterflies returned each morning. But something had shifted. It was in the way the staff smiled more. The way Richard no longer walked like a man carrying invisible weights. The way Amanda's laughter was no longer rare, but expected, as regular as the wind that danced through the curtains each day. And Cola, once a shadow behind the hedge, was now everywhere. He read in the mornings beside Amanda. He practiced simple math with a tutor Richard hired, though he often made jokes about numbers being difficult little things. He helped the cook clean up plates, swept the porch without being asked, and every evening at exactly 4 o'clock, he danced. Not because he had to, because it was how he thanked the world for letting him stay. He still wore old habits like a second skin. He never took seconds at dinner unless offered twice. He folded his blanket each morning before anyone woke up, even though he now had a proper bed with sheets. He apologized too quickly. And sometimes, late at night, Richard would find him sitting near the stairs, as if waiting to be told it was all a mistake. But it wasn't. The Lawson mansion had adopted more than a boy. It had adopted possibility. Amanda's walking improved faster than any of her doctors had predicted. It wasn't a miracle. It was effort. Every day, she took one more step. Every fall, she laughed and tried again. She started using her wheelchair only when she was tired. Eventually, she only brought it out during long days. But what Richard noticed most wasn't the physical changes. It was the way she moved through space again, claiming it. Not as a fragile thing to protect, but as a force returning to the world with intent. She teased Kola more now. She beat him at card games. She asked questions, deep ones. Do you think sadness ever fully goes away? Do you think my mom would like you? Kola answered carefully. I think sadness doesn't leave, it just learns to sit quietly sometimes. And about her mother. Yes. She would have liked me. I'm extremely charming. Amanda rolled her eyes, but smiled anyway. Richard watched them from the side often, the strange, perfect pairing. His daughter and the boy with nothing who gave her everything. Sometimes it hurt. How much Kola reminded him of what money couldn't buy. Sometimes it healed. One morning, Amanda made an announcement over breakfast. I want to go back to school. Richard looked up from his newspaper, startled. The regular one? She nodded. With the other kids. Not just home tutors. Kola stopped chewing mid-bite. I miss people, Amanda continued. I want to walk into a class. Even if I have to sit after. I want to be there. Richard set down his coffee. Are you sure you're ready? I'm sure I'm scared, she said. But that's different. He smiled. That's my girl. Then, to everyone's surprise, Amanda turned to Kola. Will you come too? Me? Kola blinked. To school. You'll hate it, Amanda said, grinning. But I want you there. Richard was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, we'll get you both enrolled. There were headlines, of course. Billionaire sends street boy to elite school with his daughter. There were debates. Think pieces. Critics and supporters. But Richard didn't care. Neither did Amanda. And Kola. Kola just wanted to know what kind of uniform he had to wear and whether they served food during break. School was hard. Kola wasn't used to sitting still, or being tested, or being looked at by kids who had only known polished shoes and air-conditioned homes. But Amanda was with him. She took her steps slowly, proudly, letting them see every movement. And when kids whispered, she whispered back louder. Say it louder, she once dared a boy who mocked Kola's accent. Say it so your mom can hear how rude you are. The boy didn't repeat it. Kola, for the first time, felt what it was like to be protected, to be someone's person. Their lives grew fuller, busier. Richard would sometimes look across the dinner table and feel stunned by how normal it had all become. Two kids bickering about homework. Two plates needing second helpings. Laughter. Life. And sometimes, late at night, he'd sit alone on the garden bench, looking out at the spot where Kola had first danced. He often whispered, "Thank you," to the empty lawn, just in case the wind was listening. Amanda kept getting stronger. By the end of the year, she could walk across the house unaided. Sometimes she stumbled. Sometimes she didn't. But she no longer feared the fall. One Sunday, they visited Amanda's mother's grave for the first time together. Amanda brought flowers. Kola carried a folded chair just in case she needed it. Richard drove them himself. They stood in silence for a while, the three of them. Then Amanda spoke. Mom, I wish you'd met him. I wish you'd seen me now. She took Kola's hand. He squeezed hers. Richard placed a hand on both their shoulders. They didn't cry. They didn't need to. They stood quietly, like people who understood each other without needing words. The final echo of Kola's old life arrived months later. A small boy from the old bus station found his way to the mansion gate. He carried a note from one of the older boys, a scrawled message that simply said, "Heard you live in a castle now. Some of us still dancing. Just wanted to say well done." Kola held the note for a long time. Then he took a blank page and wrote something back. Keep dancing. Sometimes it's not for coins. Sometimes it's to stay alive. The day Amanda walked across the stage to receive her first academic award, Richard's hands trembled, holding his phone to record it. Kola stood behind him, clapping like a man trying to create thunder. When Amanda reached the end of the stage, she turned, found them both, and gave the smallest, proudest bow. And in that moment, Richard understood it all. The crash, the silence, the boy, the dance. Every painful second had led them here, not back to what was before, but forward into something greater. That night, Amanda whispered before bed, "Do you think this is what a miracle feels like?" Kola lay on the floor beside her bed, arms crossed behind his head. "No," he said. "This is what family feels like. And Amanda smiled, then closed her eyes. Years later, when Amanda had fully regained her strength and Kola was preparing to attend college, the first in his family line to even dream of it, they still returned to the garden often. Amanda danced now too. Awkwardly, wildly, offbeat, just like Kola had that very first day. And Richard? He sat on the same old bench, watching them both, the richest man in the world by every measure that truly mattered. He no longer built his empire with oil or steel. Now he built with laughter, with belonging, with love. And it all began on a quiet afternoon, with a barefoot boy, a broken girl, and a dance that didn't ask for anything, except a chance to be seen.